Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Web3 Quick Buy podcast, the podcast where we jump to the latest beats in the decentralized world and chat with some of the brilliant minds in the Web3 industry. I'm your host, Olabisi, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Kevin, founder and CEO of Uniblock, a veteran in Web3, helping to aggregate key developer tools and resources for builders in the space. Kevin has been knee-deep in the blockchain world for years. We're talking basically since the early mining days. He's seen it all, the hype cycles, the transformations in tech, the roller coaster regulations, and a lot more. So in our conversation today, we'll tap into Kevin's unique experiences and insights as an industry trailblazer. We'll learn his thoughts on emerging trends, the future of the underlying technology, and even get his advice for Web3 entrepreneurs. Overall, I'm excited for an insightful glimpse into the mind of a forward-thinking Web3 builder and innovator here from early days. Kevin, so great to have you on the show today.
Oh, Olabisi, so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So how's everything going over at Uni?
Oh, it's going so well. We have scaled out our team, which is great. We have lots of customers onboarding. We have lots of really great partners, integrations. And the macro environment is really starting to create some nice tailwinds. It's really great times right now.
Awesome. That sounds great. So, Kevin, before we dive into today's conversation properly, I would like to ask you, what special moment initially ignited your passion for Web3 and set you on this journey?
That's a really great question. I think it's probably a mix of a couple of things. So I have always been very fascinated, very interested in finance, people's finances, people's ability to take care of themselves. I'm very passionate about that. And I had the luck to be working at a company called Wattpad, and then another company called Twitter, and then a third company called Coinbase. And each one of these companies is one of the investors is Union Square Ventures, so USB out of New York. And USB has Fred Wilson, Albert as investors. They are really big. So Fred sits on the board of Coinbase. He was one of the early people talking about Ethereum. And around 2015 or so, also one other pertinent fact is that he writes a daily blog about his thoughts. And so I would receive that and read it religiously every morning. And he started talking about something called Ethereum about 2015. And so I understood Bitcoin, but this was a new mental model for me, thinking about, things like smart contracts and thinking about how technology could be different. And so that really started to spark an interest of not only just personal finance, but also what could be potentially built in this new paradigm. So that was pretty early. That was, again, around 2015, but that's how I kind of got really interested in the space.
Awesome. I like to start my question with this particular question I just asked you because I'm mostly curious about how people got into this space. But I've discovered that a huge percentage of people that are currently in Web3, they found the space by sheer curiosity. Maybe someone just mentioned it or they stumbled on it one way or other. Definitely quite interesting to hear different perspectives of how people got into this space. It's really quite interesting. All right, so you've been involved in the blockchain space since nearly the beginning, if I can put it like that. So how have you seen awareness and adoption of blockchain technology evolve over time? And where do you think we are in the hype cycle currently?
Yeah, I think that, again, when you start thinking about right after the global financial crisis, 2009, 2010, 2011, that was kind of the genesis of Bitcoin. And so that's where things really started to begin in really early days. And then again, around the 2013, 2014, 2015 timeframe, you started to see other protocols, primarily Ethereum, which was another paradigm. So now it's not necessarily just a store of value or a medium of exchange. Now it could actually be a programming protocol. And so I think when you look at the way things are going in crypto from a technology perspective, it really does remind me of kind of the late 80s and early 90s of the internet. And so if you and I were sitting around at a bar in 1985 and talking about the internet, our mental model would be email. So you would say, hey, what's the internet? Explain it to me. And I would say, well, it's a way to send electronic mail. And that's the entire mental model of the internet in the 1985 timeframe. And then you go, 1990, ask the same question, and it's a library, it's a digital library with there's like about 100 websites, and there you can also send your mail. And it wasn't until probably, the mid 90s, the late 90s, when all of a sudden, and you can buy books from this place called Amazon, and you can order food from pets.com. And all of a sudden, we started to increase where we are, what we could do, and our mental model expanded. And, more people started to come on because all of a sudden, internet starts to become, within the United States and the West, starts to become more available. And as the mental model started to expand, so did people's usage, and so did all of the technologies that we start to take for granted. Then you go in 2005, you start to get people looking at being able to have like the Web 2. So people have Facebook, they have Twitter. When you start thinking about having their phones, I explained all of this because if you and I were sitting in a bar in 1985, very little chance that we would say, the internet is the way to pick out your phone, have access to the internet, and order a car or stay in somebody's house. Very unlikely that that's what we would be able to do. And so now going back to 2023, where we are now, that's kind of where we are. So now people's view of what blockchain, crypto, Web3 is pretty small. It's okay, you can store money, you can move money around, but that extra use cases are still not quite in our purview, in our view. And now what we're seeing, people building on top of Uniblock, they're building distributed social network, they're building real world asset ticketing. People are looking at doing distributed Uber. So I think right now we're probably in, 1992 or 1993 of the internet, and we're going to see a lot of really cool projects coming out.
I would like to talk about your company, Uniblock. Your company, Uniblock, is aggregating top Web3 dev tools. So can you explain what problem you saw that led to the creation of Uniblock and how your platform is helping Web3 developers?
Yeah. So right now, the problem we're trying to solve is that if you're a developer in Web3, there are lots and lots of different tools, and they don't necessarily work together. And it's still pretty early and pretty hard to build in Web3 in comparison to Web 2, where we have all these really great hardened tools that have been around for a decade. We don't necessarily have these right now in Web3. And so what we are building is a way for all these amazing tools to work together to accelerate developers. So if you're a developer, you probably have to work right now using 5 or 6 different tools. And so you can do that. But, the issue with that is, they don't work together. One of them might go down. There's all these like little minor issues. Or you can use Uniblock, and from one place, you can get access to all the best developer tools. And if one goes down, you automatically get a fallback. And there's all these other tools and services that we offer. So that's what we're up to. And right now we have, over 1,000 devs using the product, and we have dozens of different partnerships as well, which is great.
All right. Thanks for sharing that. So, when I did my research about Uniblock, I realized that we don't have any other startup or project doing something that you guys are doing over there. I said, how does it feel to be the first person to be doing this?
Yeah. So I think on one hand, it's really exciting because we're doing something that nobody's ever done, and we get to figure out, all the issues. We get to work with our customers. We get to try to figure out the problems. There are some opportunities around education, because when developers come to our site, they don't really know what to expect. So we have to kind of explain it. There's a bunch of technical decisions that we have to make that nobody's made. I think when I was at Twitter as a social network, when we would have issues, the truth of the matter is other people had solved a lot of these problems, right? Either you're looking at Facebook, you're looking at, Reddit or whomever. There's a bunch of other social networks that have already solved it. And primarily you can emulate somebody else. And when you are doing something for the first time that nobody's ever done before, it attracts amazing talent. People are saying, wow, like I want to work on the hardest problems. I want to work on something nobody's ever done. But if I'm honest with you, it's also a little intimidating because, we don't have the ability to just ask other people what they did. So, we're doing everything for the first time. There's nobody to really ask. And so on one hand, it's extremely exciting, and it's why we get up in the morning to do something that nobody's ever done. But on the other hand, I have to be, admit it, that there is a little bit of being nervous because you're doing something for the very first time. I'm honest with you.
Something unique on its own. So there should be a bit of, did you ever encounter some instances where you're like, okay, what exactly am I doing? Has it ever happened to you before?
Absolutely. To be honest, as a founder, as a employee at a tech startup, you have to push through when you have those feelings. But yeah, especially a year ago when all the companies like Celsius, Very Arrow, FTX, all of them are blowing up, and we're trying to do something that nobody's ever done before, and VCs are not interested in the space, customers are not interested in the space, everybody's doing AI. I'd be lying to you if I said that there wasn't a couple of times where I said, well, why aren't we just, building a wrapper on ChatGPT like everybody else? But then I think the reality is, the thesis has always been, if we build this amazing platform that nobody else is building, that people need, then when the market turns, which we're seeing it turn now, and developers are looking for their next platform, we'll be ready. We'll have a whole year of working on it. Plus, we'll have lots of customers. We'll have lots of partnerships. So yes, I definitely have looked at myself in the mirror and thought, you're crazy. But you just tell yourself that this is the plan, and the plan is coming to fruition, which is
wow. Wow. But I'm sure it's all coming together. Right?
I hope so.
Okay, so as a follow-up to that question, what resources would you point aspiring blockchain developers or entrepreneurs to as they start their journey? Because I would imagine that Uniblock aims to provide some of those resources, but are there any other particular people, companies, or communities you suggest to follow?
Yeah, first off, I think your podcast is great. I think what you're doing is awesome, and I think it's giving people that are new to the space, or even people like myself that are just trying to stay informed about the space, a way to do that. So kudos to you and all the work you're doing, because I can guarantee you that I know you're putting a lot of work into this. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And I think like resources like what you've got are great. I know that there are a number of different courses that people can take depending on what they're interested in. And actually, that's one point that I'll make. The nice thing about crypto is that you can participate almost any way that you. So you can clearly, you can be a developer, you can be a marketer working for a company, you can be even a lawyer who is now helping companies like ourselves, like Uniblock, navigate the space. You can even be an investor investing in the protocol. And that's not necessarily the case in any other technology. If you want to invest in, AI startups, it's pretty much impossible to get access to them as a retail investor. Whereas in Web3, you actually can invest. You can turn on crypto.com, Binance, Coinbase, whatever, and get exposure to the protocol, which is very unusual. So I guess what I would say is, first off, hats off to all the work that you're doing and giving us all access to the knowledge that you're doing. So thank you. And I think if you are new to this space, I would say figure out what role you're interested in playing. And then, there's lots of different avenues and ways to be involved with the space, from being a marketer to being a developer, and they're all just have different places to play.
Right. Thank you. And thanks for giving me a shout out on my podcast. Thank you.
Works.
All right. So transitioning a bit, partnerships can make or break a young company. So how have you approached partnerships for Uniblock, and what advice do you have for founders on evaluating partnership opportunities or fundraising in general? And I think my follow-up question to that will now be, what has your own fundraising process looked like?
Yeah. So on the partnership side, there's a lot there. So let me break it down. For Uniblock specifically, we have made a lot of really great partnerships with all of the different developer tools. So if you want to use Covalent, we have a partnership with them. If you want to use Parsec, we have a partnership with them. And so our view is that partnerships are extremely important, and they are very important to our business, which is we want to partner with all the best technology. So that's kind of like the bread and butter of what we're doing and how we kind of think about it. And you know what? Another thought process that's kind of come up is during the bear market when things were tough and there was, it was just harder. All of the newer companies like ourselves, we were new. We didn't have very many customers. We didn't have a lot of money. And there are, dozens of other companies that are in a similar position. And, we reached out and said, hey, let's all help each other. You're building something awesome. You need access to people. You need, guidance. Let's all work together to help each other get through this. And so I am very aligned with helping each other out. And so that's kind of the spirit of Uniblock, which is how do we help everybody in the ecosystem get ahead? And so yeah, that's our MO.
Awesome. That's great. So I want to talk about your experience as an industry insider. So what emerging trends or developments in blockchain tech are you most excited or hopeful about right now, and why?
Yeah. So again, with my analogy about the internet, I think we're like in 1993. We're in the early 90s. And that means not everybody has access. So not everybody has access to the internet. Not everybody even has a computer or access to a computer. Definitely nobody has a cell phone with access. So I think right now it's still really early. If you look at the amount of people in the ecosystem, it's pretty small. It's still really small. And the amount of people that have exposure is still small. So that's one piece that I'm really excited about. I think that we're going to see more and more people with access in the coming years, where whether that be people who now have access to an ETF, so maybe they are not able to invest directly through kind of like a Coinbase or something like that. Now they can put some funds in an ETF. It just creates an easier on-ramp. And I think we're seeing some clarity from a regulatory perspective, particularly in the United States, where now more people could potentially have access. So I think, again, we're giving people those on-ramps into the space, which I think is really great. I think the other thing that I'm really excited about is the tools and services that consumers are using right now are still kind of hard to use in a lot of ways. If you want to move your assets around, or if you want to even, buy your domain name, it's not a super seamless experience right now. There's a lot of UX that is, broken or can be optimized. And it feels, again, with the internet in 92. Remember, we don't have Google back then. We don't really have a browser. You're literally like banging in the command code exactly where you want to go. So, you're probably going and buying pieces of a computer and putting it together yourself. So I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And the thing that gets me really excited, though, is the people that are building on top of us are building really cool projects. So you're going to get social networks that are decentralized. You're going to get ticketing that's going to be decentralized. You're going to get access to really cool financial tools. So we look at developer as a leading indicator of the future and what we'll be enjoying as consumers about a year out. And so my take is you're going to see more access to crypto. You're going to see easier access to crypto, and you're going to see tools and services that are aligned with what the vision is that we've been kind of hoping for. And so that's what I get excited about in the next couple of quarters.
Okay, great. So, building on that future outlook, right? What do you think some key milestones or breakthroughs are that need to happen for blockchain to reach mass scale adoption?
I think right now we're still talking about the underlying technology. So if you look at an adoption curve, generally the early adopters kind of come on and they're willing to put up with, broken windows and edge cases and all these things because they're early adopters. You're the first one to buy an electric car. You're okay if it doesn't really have a charging network. You're kind of okay if it's hard to use. You're okay with that. But, when you start wanting to get to the point where you can just buy a car and not even think about it, you don't want to talk about the technology and all these things. You just say, oh, I just want a car. Like, I don't want to worry about all this other stuff. And I think that's the same thing with Web3 and crypto right now. We're all still talking about the technology. And we've already kind of got all the early adopters, I think, for the most part, that are like willing to put up with all these, problems that we're kind of accustomed to. And so, if you are going to Starbucks and you don't care if it's blockchain, you just want your free coffee, right? Like if you're going to use Reddit, you don't care, you don't really care if it's blockchain. You just want to give them, a Reddit Gold or whatever it is. And so we're getting close to where you, as a consumer, don't need to worry about the technology, but we're not there yet. And I think in the next, coming years, we'll get to the point where you and I could literally be talking on decentralized product right now, and we wouldn't even know it. And that's when I think it's exciting, when we're just using stuff seamlessly. And, it doesn't feel like you're talking about Web3 or crypto. You're just using a product.
So, still on adoption, what do you see the biggest trust gap still lurking for institutions in Web2 eyeing blockchain? Because I know we have a couple of them that are still on the sidelines looking for how to get in. So they're sort of like, okay, what's happening? Should I take a step forward or should I take a step back? So what do you see the biggest trust gaps for brands like that or for projects like that that's the eyeing blockchain from the sidelines? And how can projects gain more credibility?
Yeah. So again, if you are a CEO of a major corporation, you're looking at new technologies like blockchain, AI, and you're thinking, okay, how does this impact my company? How can we leverage this technology? And when you start looking at blockchain, there's lots of different ways that companies are kind of working on it and playing with it. But the problem is, I believe, that it's still a little bit too difficult for them to quickly build out and leverage the technology. And so you're seeing a lot of experimentation. You're seeing brands kind of, dip their toe. Everything from the auto manufacturers looking at blockchain to help them with their supply chains, to LVMH and luxury brands thinking about how they can potentially tokenize or leverage NFTs for their. So there's lots of that. But again, like, we are still a little bit of a ways from it being a super seamless, easy way for them to leverage it. And so I think every CEO is open-minded. Not every, let me change that. I think many CEOs are open-minded to understand how it can impact them. And there's a small subset that are willing to allocate resources to it. And I think it's up to us, all of us in the industry, to build out those tools and services that they can leverage. So again, like, if you're thinking about the early 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, you saw companies saying, "Oh, this internet thing is a fad. It's not useful." And then slowly you saw internet, early internet adopters like Amazon and all these other companies kind of start to leverage it. And then slowly you saw companies like Walmart start to adopt it over the next 10 years, but it took some time. And so I think we have these Web3 native companies that are moving forward, and then you're going to see, and now you're seeing kind of like larger banking institutions, you're seeing larger brands kind of come on. So again, I think that I don't want to continuously go back to that narrative or that analogy too often, but I think it's very much a similar experience where if blockchain was easier to leverage, you would see Walmart using it more prevalently. And we're almost there, but not quite there yet.
Well, I'm not quite there yet. I like that. And I as a person, I honestly can't wait for what the future holds for blockchain and Web3. I can't wait. I honestly can't wait for it to gain that mass adoption. And then we have so many Web2 brands transitioning to Web3 and building nice things on the blockchain. But then we can only wait it out, right? Can only wait it out and hope that it happens soon. So let's talk about obstacles. Of course, there are still obstacles in the way, like policy, regulation, and whatnot. So what are the most critical issues on your radar then, and what outcomes would you like to see?
The obstacles are dependent a little bit on where you are in the world. So from a policy perspective, in certain parts of the world, it's game on. People are saying, okay, yeah, we've got clarity, or it doesn't matter, and we're moving forward. And in other parts of the world, there is some clarity that is required for certain projects or certain things you're trying to solve. So I think on the policy side, we're starting to come to the end of it, though. We're seeing in the US, the SEC has been handed a number of losses, frankly. XRP and Ripple, we seem to have some clarity there. Even like Binance, we have clarity there for the most part. So it feels like we're starting to come to the end of the policy side. It looks like all signals say that we're going to receive a spot Bitcoin ETF in the US, which, by the way, we already have them in Canada and other parts of the world for the last 2 years. So it's not like we don't have a spot Bitcoin ETF or even, frankly, a spot Ethereum ETF. We already have those. It's just in the US we don't. So that's on the regulatory side. And I think on the access side and just like the technology side, again, when we started to think about the internet, like, you had to do everything yourself. And then eventually companies like AWS and all these other products were built, and they made developing on the web like seamless. If you and I wanted a website, we could get one for Webflow, or we can essentially build a website in 30 seconds to a minute, and we could launch it, and we could like accept credit card. We could get, freight forwarding to ship something. We could set up our business on the internet in, an hour probably, and it would look great. On blockchain, it's nowhere close to that. It's a lot harder. And so I think that particular space is where we're working. where we want to accelerate the development of new things because, again, we believe that developers are a leading indicator of what retail is going to, consumers will be utilizing. And so once the tools are easier to use, I think there'll be more and more stuff built out.
Yes, I agree with that because I've spoken to quite a number of people, and then what they're always telling me is that it's too complicated. Well, please, too complicated for me. What exactly are you guys doing there? I don't even understand how to navigate it and things like that. And so I think that's what is making most people watch from the sidelines because it's too complicated for them. There are lots of countries saying, okay, we don't understand what exactly this is. It's giving fraud or it's giving we don't understand it basically. Like in Nigeria, yeah, there's a clampdown on people who trade in Bitcoin or in cryptocurrencies. And if there's any maybe any notification that you're receiving funds related to crypto, they restrict your account immediately. And so I think those are some of the things that stopping people from actually making that transition to Web3. But just like you said, as the years goes by, hopefully there will be lesser restrictions and then there will be more widespread and mass adoption. Time goes on.
I agree fully. And I think part of the issue has been we've had bad actors that have made made life hard for all of us. And those bad actors, unfortunately, sully the name of what we're trying to do. It does feel like in time, I mean, to be honest, when you look at any technology, grifters tend to be attracted when there's a way to make money. That's the truth, right? Like, again, you look at the internet, how many frauds are committed, phishing scams, like email scams, there's tons. And so it just took a while for us to get through that crap and build the technologies required to protect people. So anti-spam, antivirus products, all these things. So we're getting to the point where those are starting to be built, where you're going to have, spam filters and protection on Web3, but we're not quite there yet as well. So I'm really excited about that. And I think we're getting through all the muck and we are going to, emerge over the course of the next couple of years. And I think we're going to see in the US some regulatory clarity. And I think when that happens, it starts to create a framework for the rest of the world. Again, we have that framework in some degrees in some countries, but they aren't at the scale of the United States.
I agree with that. So let's talk about let's take a step back from policy and regulation. Now let's talk about companies building in Web3. So we have with the bull market set to happen next year, hopefully. We have people already have the idea that okay, they want to build something, they want to be the next project that's going to transform the world. I mean, we all have great ideas, right? It's still for companies building in Web3 today, or companies who are planning on building in Web3. What business models or strategies do you think would be most competitive long term?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that question is a little loaded because right now the most obvious business models are around things like trading and kind of the movement of cryptocurrency as a business model. Either you're helping people trade, you're helping people store, and I think that's great. I think that has been kind of, again, like, oh, the internet's just email. I think that's where we're at right now. Even the name cryptocurrency really lends itself to being a currency and a store of value, a medium of exchange. And so those business models currently are the most lucrative. And you see that through things like Coinbase, which is listed, various trading products, whatever. Now, I think that's great. But I think what's also really exciting to me is to think about certain business models that are becoming a little outdated or are at risk of being usurped. And by that, I mean things like the advertising model is difficult. Unless you're Facebook and Google with the scale and the technology, it's very difficult to build, a really scaled business model around ads. And there's a couple of other models like that, which I think, frankly, something like Web3 could potentially create a new model for all of us to enjoy. So, for example, you look at like Twitter, there's a lot of companies that are trying to build a decentralized version of Twitter, either, I guess, and or to create the ability of owning your own data, which I don't know. I mean, I don't know if people care, to be honest. That's to be decided. But I do believe that people are looking for ways to create value out of just ads. I feel like, again, I think with ads, we're getting to the point where we're kind of hitting the upper threshold. And so, there's when we have something like a distributed social network, that unlocks other business models where maybe we're all creating value that we could potentially take, we can capture some of the value together and have different business models. Same thing with things like eBay, right? So, could you potentially have a distributed auction site? Can you potentially have like a distributed like Craigslist, things like that? Those are companies that are being built on Uniblock right now, which are really exciting. And so I think right now, if we had a company with scale that was a distributed, again, like an Uber or like a Craigslist or like a Twitter, I think that could be very interesting. I think there's pieces of that business model that are ripe for disruption. We're not quite there yet. We're getting close where the tools are starting to be a little bit easier to use, where as a consumer, you don't feel like you're on distributed Twitter. You just feel like you're on a Twitter kind of competitor. So that's where I get really excited. I think that's like the future. Like, sure, yeah, there's, I don't know, how many trading platforms do we need? I feel like there's a lot of them. I'm not that excited for the next one, but I am really excited about new business models, like even podcasting, right? Like, is there ways that we can create new value exchange for yourself where we're all contributing, we're all like somehow being involved? Like, I just think that's where it starts to get exciting. It moves on. Like, again, at the beginning of this conversation, I said I'm very passionate about people's finance and the ability to kind of finance their life and take agency over their life. I'm very passionate about that. And on the other hand, I think that this particular technology has the ability to open up those really cool ways to drive a living for people.
Yes. I agree with that. I really, really agree with that. So, let's have our final question. So my final question for you will be, understanding the space takes lifelong learning, of course, because there are always new things to learn all the time. There are always new things to try to get to understand, and so many things, basically. So what still excites you or surprises you as someone experienced with cutting-edge blockchain innovations? And is there any recent aha moment to share with us?
Aha moments are almost every single day. Yesterday, for example, we were talking to one of our customers, and he is an expert. He's built lots of cool stuff. He's, scaled his previous companies to 100 million users. Just an amazing person. And he was giving us feedback on Uniblock, and he was saying, "Hey, I don't really understand this because again, sorry, just one piece of information is relevant. Again, a lot of what we're doing, like we're coming up with names for things, like, oh, we're a unified API, or where's our unified contracts product, or here's our backup product." And he's saying, "Hey, backup is confusing. You should call it a fallback, or unified API is confusing. You should use this word." So every day there's aha moments. You have to have, on one hand, you have to have a level of belief in yourself that, you're willing, you can push through, and you have to believe in yourself to a certain degree to be an entrepreneur and working at a tech startup, especially when nobody's ever done this before. But on the other hand, you have to have enough humility to say, yeah, I mean, our customers are saying this, like, let's listen, right? Is there something we can learn from them? And I think it's a really interesting dichotomy between having the confidence to push forward and having the confidence in yourself to actually listen and be, changing. So that's us. Like, every day there's something new that I learn. And as long as you're willing to listen, you can learn a lot. And again, I think for me, it's, if we sit down again over beers in our favorite bar, like I've been saying, I feel like there are so many things that we know are broken in the space. If we say, hey, like, actually somewhat hard to get money into it. It's actually kind of hard to get money out of it. It's actually kind of hard to, find the right projects to be involved with as a consumer or as an investor. It's kind of hard to safeguard your money because people are constantly trying to scam you, and there's not really any sort of like fail safe to protect you from, these bad guys. So there are dozens of these things that are problems and are impediments to mass adoption. And I'm pretty excited because I see people fixing that. I see people fixing the security problem. I see people bringing the on-ramp and off-ramp problem solved. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. I feel like every quarter things get a little bit better. And so we're just happy to be a small piece of that.
Yes, all right. And I like how it says that if you listen, you will learn a lot. So I guess we have to do a lot of listening so we can learn. And then by learning, we can actually change the world like we set out to do. Great. Thank you so much, Kevin, for an insightful and exciting conversation. If I could have my way, I would want us to record this for 2 hours straight because I have loads of questions to ask you. Loads of questions to ask you. But I hope that one of these days we'll have you back on the show so we can continue our conversation from where we stopped.
Yeah, you know what? I've really enjoyed our conversations and our previous conversations. Thank you very much for taking the time to, shine a light at what we're trying to build here at Uniblock. I'm super excited to talk to people in other parts of the world. The truth is, Web3 crypto, it's global. And so being able to learn more about what's going on in the world is super important and valuable to me. So I would love to be on your show again. Just let me know, and I'm here.
Awesome. I'll take you up on that one of these days. All right. And that wraps up today's episode of the Web3 Quick Bite podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. And if you have any feedback or questions, please reach out on social media or send me an email at web3quickbites@gmail.com. Thanks again to our guests for joining us. And thank you, awesome listeners, for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more exciting content. So be sure to subscribe and tune in.